I don't know if expert is the right word. I don't want to set the expectations too high, but so my name is Paul Richards. Like Joel said, I'll give you some background on myself. Currently, I'm one of the assistant coaches and the defensive coordinator at the University of Richmond, about 20 minutes up the street here. Before that, I spent 3 years coaching at Cornell University in upstate New York, and prior to that, I was a player at Loyola, what was Loyola College then, now it's Loyola University. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, and you know, now my family and I are here and enjoying Richmond. As you can tell, the summers are hot, but hopefully you guys are staying cool enough. And yeah, like Joel said, there are a lot of questions now about the new recruiting rules, and I wouldn't normally feel too comfortable speaking about, you know, some of the women's game and you know, their rules and things like that. But the new proposal that just went through was actually a joint proposal between the women's coaches group and the men's coaches group. So there are some similarities there. So I'll do my best to answer any questions that you guys have, and especially on the women's side. I won't pretend to be an expert, but happy to help out however I can. For those that don't know, the new rules that went into place, all right, the first thing I'll say is I can genuinely tell you that the coaches voted to put these rules forward for the betterment of everybody, for the players, for your families, for our coaches and our families. It was genuinely something, you know, you put 70 men's college coaches in a room and you have to vote, and there's a lot of competitive juices flowing, and a lot of coaches we had to put, and I don't get a vote, the head coaches vote, every program gets one, but you have to put a lot of the competitive kind of nature aside and try and do what's best for the game and best for the recruiting process and best for the families out there. And so I can tell you that was the goal of the rules that were put in place. And what we decided to do was basically eliminate any contact between a college coach and a prospective student athlete until September 1st of your junior year. The only contact that can happen is at a camp. If you go to a camp, instructional camp, even a prospect camp, you can interact with that coach. Obviously, they can coach you, they can give you pointers. There can be no talk of recruiting. You know, you can't make an offer or anything like that. And so the spirit of the rule was to really slow this process down and try and allow the players in high school to really, you know, go out and play other sports, go out, enjoy the summertime with your families, not have to worry and stress about picking a college, you know, when you're in 9th grade or even 8th grade. You know, some of the people were doing before these rules were put into place. And so that's what the biggest part of the new rule was to eliminate all contact between coaches, and again, this is Division I. So the Division I rules are very different than 2 and 3, so everything that I'm discussing is a Division I rule. So there can be no contact between a Division I coach and a prospective student athlete until September 1st of junior year. On September 1st, it completely opens up. So phone calls, emails, visits to campus, offers, you know, verbal offers and you know, verbal commitments, all that stuff opens up on that date, on that September 1st date. One of the loopholes that was used previously was to work through your club coaches to communicate with us, or for us to communicate to you. That has been eliminated as well. So I can't, as a coach, call your club coach and say, hey, tell Johnny that we saw him play this past weekend and we really liked what we saw, and we you know, we're going to make him an offer on September 1st. We cannot pass any messages along or communicate through any third party, high school coach, club coach, family friend, whatever the case may be. We cannot communicate through those people to get you a message. So it's really kind of put a lockdown on any communication prior to you know, prior to the junior year in high school. And so now some of that may be confusing because a lot of you guys probably go out and you see coaches sitting on your sidelines before maybe that date or a year before that date. Coaches can still watch you play. We can still sit in your field, we can still watch you, build our list for the future and say, hey, this is a person that we're going to keep an eye on down the road, and when that contact date opens up, that we can communicate with them at that point. So coaches can still evaluate you and watch you play, but the communication piece is the biggest piece of the new recruiting rules and the recruiting landscape. There is a lot kind of to be determined in terms of how that's going to affect the process. And there's a lot that probably this September 1st and every September 1st after that will kind of be figured out. You know, there's obviously a lot of 2019 verbal commitments out there that guys probably haven't heard from their coaches, and they're wondering, you know, is that coach going to still honor my commitment? You know, those questions are going to be answered on a per program basis. You know, I can tell you at Richmond, we only have one of those. We tend to recruit on a slower timeline. We've always been that way, and we'll continue to be that way. So we have one 2019 commitment. We just took a 2018 commit yesterday, and we took a senior this year who just graduated high school. We took him in April of his senior year. So we've always operated a little slower, just personally as a program. But I'm sure a lot of those questions, I don't know if there's any people here who are verbally committed to a school, but that's something you'll have to deal with, you know, with that coach when September 1st of your junior year hits. So there is a lot of dust to still settle, but that is the nature of the rule. That was the intent of the rule, to really allow you as families, us as coaches, to kind of take a deep breath, let the process happen, let you know, high school kids enjoy your high school career, both as an athlete and just as a student, and socially have time to go on vacation with your family and not have to worry about you know, whether or not Richmond's going to be giving you an offer as an 8th grader in high school. So that's kind of just to lay out there the new rules that were put into place. There's other addendums and things like that are part of the rule, but at this point, you know, we'd love to open it up to questions, and mainly just I want to be here to answer questions that you guys have, and I know there's a lot of them out there. So if there's any questions from you guys, I'm happy to answer those to the best of my ability. The question was, what if a coach already reached out to, you know, to a prospective student athlete prior to that September 1st date? If they reached out before the rule was put into place, and then that young man or woman calls you, at that point I would have to say, thank you for the call, I can no longer speak with you, and I would have to hang up the phone immediately. Obviously we can't control who calls us, so if someone were to call me at that point, I would have to hang up the phone, quickly explain the rules, is the way our compliance department has described it to us. I can say, you know, thank you for the call, based on the new recruiting rules I cannot contact you until September 1st, and then we'd have to hang up the phone. If there's someone who's contacted you since then, it wouldn't be in line with the new rules. So that would be my best answer to that one. Yes? That's a great question. So the question was the difference between Division I and then 2 and 3 in terms of the contact. I'll be honest, that's not one I'll be able to answer 100%. We as Division I coaches, I know our rules. I can tell you Division I is the strictest. Because of the scholarships involved and the resources involved, the Division I schools have the most strict rules in place. Division III has the most loose because there are no athletic scholarships in Division III. So as far as my understanding, a Division III coach can talk to you at any point from 9th grade, 8th grade, all the way through until you graduate. Division II is a little more of a gray area because there are athletic scholarships. They're just more limited than Division I. Division I, there's 12.6 scholarships is the max that the NCAA allows you to have as a Division I program. Now, that doesn't mean, that's up to your school if they want to fully fund you to that point, but Division I schools are limited to 12.6 scholarships. I don't know what the Division II limit is, but it's less than Division I, so that's the best I can answer that. Division I is the most strict, I can tell you that. So they would either be looser or the same in Division II and III.
I got to get a gist of which Division I. Can you give us examples of colleges 2 and 3?
Yeah, Division II colleges. Limestone has won a couple national championships recently. Lemoyne, Mercyhurst are some of the Division II colleges. Tampa has recently added and been in a couple national championship games, I believe. Division III, you have like your Lynchburgs, your Cortland, your Salisbury, who's won a more national championships that I can count on two hands. So those would be some examples of your Division II and then Division III schools. And I'm sure if you were to go on the NCAA website and you can go by division and you can look at the list of schools in each division, they'll sort them out for you. Because there's a lot of them. Division III has the most. There's over 200 Division III men's lacrosse programs. In Division I, there's 70 men's programs. And then in Division I, the women's side, it's grown exponentially because of Title IX. I believe there's over 120 women's programs at the Division I level. That's a good question. The question was, what's a penalty for a coach that were to contact someone before September 1st? Those are handled internally within each compliance department. So the way, and again, I'll speak just as much as I know. If a violation were to take place and it were reported, your compliance department deals with the NCAA, and the NCAA hands down a ruling that would be handled kind of within the university. So those things aren't always made public. Now, if you have a bigger violation, like you see, Syracuse basketball a couple years ago, Louisville basketball recently, those are going to be, bigger punishments that are more well known. You might have the first offense, if it's considered a minor offense, you might have 2 days in the summer where you're not allowed to go out and recruit on the road, where you can't go watch lacrosse. So, but I can tell you that every violation you have, 1, 2, 3 strikes, they're going to get more strict. More. You're going to get more penalized each time. I believe that the violation would go back to the player only if the player were to attend the institution that committed the violation. So if I committed a violation with a player, he came to Richmond, he might have to sit out for his freshman year. But if he went to High Point, then he wouldn't, because they didn't commit the violation. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So when you're sitting on the sidelines watching the players, what draws an athlete to your attention? What do you guys look at?
So at Richmond, again, I'll speak just to Richmond. When we're out there and we're looking for players, I mean, one of the biggest things these days is there's so many good players out there. Lacrosse, from the time I grew up until now, there's good players everywhere. I'm sure it's the same on the women's side. There really are. And so on the field, we look for guys who are going to do the extra stuff. We're going to pick up ground balls. We're going to hustle hard in the ride. We're going to run off the field. Guys who have all the chin straps buckled and say yes coach, and don't argue with the referee. Those things, they all sound small, but one thing we've started to notice is there's so many good players out there that the character stuff and the little things are the things that really separate kind of the cream of the crop. The guys, we in the recruiting process at Richmond, we'll call your guidance counselor, we'll call your head football coach, we'll call your lacrosse coach, obviously. We're going to do as much due diligence on our end to find out who you are as a young man or woman, or young man for us, on the front end, to make sure that we're getting the right types of people in our program. So those intangibles, honestly, are the biggest thing that we will look at in the recruiting process, and a lot of that you don't see necessarily on the field. There's always some warning signs or some things that you can tell maybe that they have out on the field, but we don't really know until we make those phone calls to a coach or to a guidance counselor or a teacher and say, hey, what is he like in the hallways? What is he like in the cafeteria? What is he like at practice every day? As opposed to just, hey, is he the best player out there? Because I think the best, there's so many good players. The margin for error now is so small, and the guys that do things the right way, have the right mentality, have the right work ethic, they're going to, I think, separate themselves at the college level.
So then, rules obviously prevent the college contacting students. What can the student do to contact the college?
Yeah, good question. So we cannot contact you, but you guys can contact coaches as much as you want. So, and the easiest way is via email. So you can, my inbox is flooded with emails, especially this time of year when there's the most amount of tournaments and events going on. We get hundreds a day. I kid you not, literally hundreds of prospective student athletes will email us per day, and you can do that as often as you like. So we can read that. We actually can. There's two things that we can send you right now as a Division I coach if you're younger than September 1st of your junior year. We can send you a camp invitation. So if we have an instructional camp or a prospect camp, we can email you with a camp invitation. And the other thing would be we can send you a questionnaire for you to input your data and get into our system. And along with that questionnaire, we have a approved response through our compliance department that explains the rules. It's very black and white, kind of exactly what I said we would say on the phone. It just would say, due to the NCAA rules, we are not able to contact you until September 1st of your junior year. Please fill out the attached questionnaire, and that's all we can say. So those prior to September 1st are the two things that you may get from a college coach. But up until that point, you can email us every day if you wanted. I wouldn't encourage you to do that, but you can email coaches as much as you like and say, here's my schedule, here's where I'm going to be, here's my transcript, here's my highlight video. All those are things that you guys can do as prospective student athletes who are interested in specific schools.
What's your opinion on multiple sports? It seems like lacrosse is a year-round sport.
Yep. Yeah, so the question was about multi-sport athletes, and another really good question. We're huge advocates of playing multiple sports. I think that when students in high school, when they play other sports, they have to be committed year-round. If you're a lacrosse player year-round and it's rainy and drowsy on a fall day in September, you might not go outside and play wall ball or shoot on a goal or go for a run. But if you're having football practice, you're going to be at practice. I can assure you of that. So I think the commitment year-round, I think the skills that you learn from each sport will translate to the lacrosse field, both from an intangible standpoint, leadership, teamwork, all those things, communication, but also, from the men's side, basketball, hockey, football, soccer, all those things translate very well in terms of the physical skills that you'll learn. So we really encourage guys to go play multiple sports and to stop quitting, football and soccer and all those sports. When we go through the process, we kind of have 3 check boxes that we look for specifically at the University of Richmond. One of them is that you play multiple sports. So if you play multiple sports, that's a check in the right box, okay? The second one is that young man a leader on the field, off the field? Is he someone that would be a captain in your program at some point? If he is, that's a checkbox. And then the third one is people who come from winning programs who compete for championships. Now that could be your football team, that could be your lacrosse team. That's somewhat out of your control. But nobody in our program has 0 of those boxes checked. Everyone in our program has at least 1, and most of them have 2 or 3. And the multiple sports is a big one. Winning programs. We like to have guys who are ingrained and taught and coached how to win. And again, that might not be your lacrosse program. It might be your football or hockey program as well. Yes.
What percentage historically of verbal commits actually sign?
That's one I'll answer just specifically for Richmond. We've had 1 verbal commitment that has not ended up at Richmond, and he didn't do his job in the classroom. Richmond's a strong academic school. We have to meet requirements. When he committed, we said, this is what you have to do. And he got a handful of C's and a couple of D's on his transcript, and we didn't have the ability to get him into school anymore. So that was the one for us specifically that did not come to Richmond.
So some coaches try to jump in front of that window, right? They might have given like 10 verbal commitments to like 8 to 9 graders. Are they probably going to hold it all the way through 3 or 4 years?
It's possible. It's possible. I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of them don't end up at those schools, but also I don't want to speculate. We aren't in that boat, so I can't speak from experience. But
players generally break more so than the
I would say it's probably about 50-50. Players might say, hey, I have a better opportunity here, or I made my decision too early and I want a different type of school than I thought I wanted 2 years ago. We have guys on our roster who were committed to other schools, I can tell you that, and we didn't openly go recruit them. They reached out, and honestly, one in particular said, hey, I committed 2 years ago, and I want a better academic school. I'm more focused now as a student. When I made the decision as a sophomore, I was looking at the wrong things. I was looking at the stadium and the weight room, and now I'm making my decision off of the class sizes and the degree and your business school. So we have a couple guys that happened with that are on our roster, but we haven't had many that have not ended up on our roster.
Piggyback off of that, the number that our side, how many are making it through? How many are making it through the program in 4 or 5 years to graduation?
We have had. There's been no one that's seen themselves all the way through that hasn't graduated for us. That has not graduated. A couple guys have had to do maybe an extra semester. A couple guys have done a grad. We have a young man coming back this year to get his graduate degree. We haven't had anyone that is matriculated at Richmond that hasn't. A few transfers that have left, but anyone who's stuck with us, hasn't. There hasn't been anyone who hasn't graduated.
So one of your earlier comments about multi-sports, so my daughter plays lacrosse, that's summer, winter, fall, because it doesn't really leave itself open to doing multi-sports. Is that something we should be considering, or?
The clubs that go year round?
Yes.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's more, I would put more stock in you playing, your daughter playing soccer for your high school team than playing club lacrosse in September. I think it's, me personally, I think you're going to have more benefits there. Again, being part of a team who's playing for something, who's at practice every day, who's working, who's with a coach who sees you in the hallways every day and working with you from that perspective. And then again, there's I think one thing people forget is there are a ton of skills. Let's say if you're a soccer player, the footwork. We had a guy just graduated for us. He was going to go play Division III soccer, and since we're a younger program, he was available later in the process, and he ended up coming to play for us. He was our best cover defenseman. He was a 3-time first-team all-conference guy. He guarded some of the best attacking in the country. When we beat when we beat North Carolina this past year, they had an All-American attackman who had like a 55-game point streak. He shut him down. He ended his point streak. And this is a young man who was going to go play soccer at the Division III level. I think that the skills that you will learn from soccer are going to outweigh, maybe having the stick in your hands a couple extra days, because then the players that get to college with a college coach and are working every day on their fundamentals and on their stick work and being in the weight room, and then they focus just on lacrosse, those are the ones that peak at the right time. A lot of the ones that we see playing lacrosse year round, they tend to peak in like junior, senior year of high school, and then they get to you and maybe they're not a bad player, but maybe they're the same player that they were 2 years ago.
What's the GPA requirement for Richmond?
So Richmond works kind of off of a sliding scale. So it works in conjunction with your test scores. So the higher that your GPA is, the more flexibility you would have on your SAT or ACT score. So let's say you have a 3.5 GPA, you might only need a 1200 on your SAT. But if you have a 2.5, you might need to get above a 1300 or 1350 on your SAT. So they work in conjunction at Richmond. But I would say what we tell guys is A's and B's on your transcript with more A's than B's, and challenging yourself in the classroom, taking the most challenging courses that you can. If you're a math and science guy, taking AP math, AP science, if those are it's something that you're comfortable doing. So there's not necessarily a hard requirement, but if you did want to go on our website, you could look at the average GPA and average test scores of every class in the last couple of years that's come into Richmond.
Thank you.
Yeah, once they get to college. Yeah. Yeah. It's a full-time job. I won't lie to you, and this sometimes scares guys away at the Division I level. Being a Division I student athlete, it's a full-time job. You're going to have, obviously, your course load and your classes are first and foremost. In addition to that, you're going to have weight room. We generally lift year-round. So if we're in season, we're lifting twice a week. If we're out of season, we're usually lifting 3 or even 4 times a week, along with conditioning. All of our freshmen will do a lot of number of study hall hours to help them block that and manage their time early on in their career. You're going to have obviously practices as well. So the way that the Division I year is split, it's kind of split into 3 parts. You have your what's called your non-traditional season, which is kind of loosely known as like your fall ball. which a lot of you guys probably have heard of. And that's about a 4 to 5 week window. That's like a mini snapshot of the spring. So it gives like the young guys and the freshmen a good look at what it's going to be like in the spring on a much bigger scale. So during that time period, we'll practice just about every day, 5 days a week. The last couple weeks, we'll do some inter-squad scrimmages on Saturdays. During that time of year, we'll lift twice a week, and then we'll have, again, study hall hours, classes, and everything included. And then when you're in your complete off season, you're limited by the NCAA to 8 hours a week. So for us, from about mid-October through the end of the final exams in December, you have 8 hours a week. So that's actually the time period where it's the easiest on them. 6 of those hours will be strength conditioning. So we'll, say if you go 3 days, it's 2 hours a day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have a lift and conditioning for 2 hours a day. And then the other 2 hours are allowed to be some type of lacrosse skill instruction. So, for us personally, we'll do an hour of like me, I'll be with all the defensemen out on the field, and we'll do footwork, approaches, stick work, all for an hour. And then on Fridays, as a team, we actually play box. We have an indoor box league that we play with our guys. We have a trophy, we have a championship and a draft and all that stuff, because there's a lot of skills that we learn in that. So that's your 8 hour window. And then once you get back to school in January, it's full go. We'll usually lift 3 days a week in preseason, and then once the first game week starts, we'll lift only twice a week. But you have either 4 or 5 classes throughout the week. You've got 2 or 3 lifts, 2 once you hit the season, and then freshmen still have study hall. You're still going to have, at that point, we add in film, where we have film for about a half hour before every practice. So it's a full-time job. It keeps them very busy, and you have to be extremely committed, and it's not for everybody. So I think that's why there's a place, there's a process for everybody. And Division I is definitely the most time-consuming once you get to college.
So you have played for a winning lacrosse program in your high school. What's the best place to put your money to get noticed outside the club ball or something?
That's a good question. I'm a big advocate of the prospect days. I wouldn't encourage you to go to 15 of them, but I would encourage you, if there's 2 or 3 schools that you're really interested in, going to those prospect days. I know there's a lot of lacrosse being played and a lot of money being spent with the clubs and things like that in the tournaments, but I think we've always taken guys, every single prospect day we've ever had, we've had at least one guy who's ended up at Richmond. So we put a lot of stock into ours, and I would encourage you, again, I wouldn't say go to 15 or 20, but if you could pick, here's the schools that I'm interested in, and even contacting that coach maybe if it's after September 1st and seeing if there's mutual interest, and maybe then going to that prospect day, because the benefit to those is that we're able to see how they take coaching. If I give you a pointer, can you implement that pointer into the field, into the game, or do I have to tell you 3 or 4 or 5 times? Are you coachable? Are you yes sir, no sir when you interact? So I would say, going to a select few prospect days to specific schools that you're interested in is a good way. And usually those are pretty cheap, considering how much money is being spent for the clubs and things like that. Ours is $175. It's from about 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we give them as full of a day as we can give them in just one day. So.
Can you do those at any point in high school, or is it just junior?
You can do the prospect days at any point in time, freshman year all the way through senior year. Yeah. Out west, emails, highlight videos. As much as you can do remotely. I mean, we do look at highlight videos quite a bit. We have a guy coming from California this year. For the first time we saw him, actually it was on his highlight video. We saw him play. We were like, wow, this kid's he's pretty good. We actually sent him a prospect camp invite. He came to our prospect camp, and now he's coming. So Coach Brzezinski, he's sitting back there. He was on staff with us last year. He can attest to that. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. So. I'm not just blowing hot air, but so that's one way I think would be highlight videos. Leaning on, if you guys are spending a lot of money on a club, lean on those coaches. Use them as much as you can. I know the club teams and whatnot, they cost a lot of money, so working that club coach to the bone as much as resources he can put into it. Have him do that, and then your high school coaches as well. We put obviously a lot of stock into the recommendations of high school coaches, and so leaning on those people. And then I think the prospect days, same thing. Like if you can hit like 2 or 3 prospect days, I know you're not going to go to a ton of them, but if you can focus on a couple of schools that you're specifically interested in, I think those are probably worth your time, worth your money.
Showcases versus is that equal or is it not?
A showcase,
Like,
right.
now, does that work or just focus on the showcase for the college that we're getting such a crap right now?
I'm sure you are, yeah.
Easily they
Right.
So it's like, what is worthwhile to do?
So the showcases are generally going to be, you're going to have maybe more coaches where you'll have 20 coaches on the sideline, and there's a third party running the event. It's not a specific coach or university running the event. The prospect days are going to be like, if you say, hey, University of Richmond is my dream school, that's where I want to go. It's going to be more focused on one school. Now we are running our prospect day this weekend. We've actually invited 6 other schools, so we're going to have like Loyola and Penn State are going to have coaches there, and there's going to be 4 Division III schools that'll be there. So we feel like that gives the guys coming a little more bang for their buck, so that they feel like, hey, it's not just Richmond or nothing. It's you have another opportunity as well there. But so the prospect days are generally going to be more focused on, hey, I'm going here specifically for the opportunity at Richmond. The showcases, you're not going to work as closely with the coaches, but you're going to have more exposure to more coaches at once. So I would say, as you go through your high school career, you start to get maybe more focused within your couple schools you have it narrowed down to. That's when to hit the prospect days. Maybe don't hit them when you're in like 8th or 9th grade, because at that point, just like we have a wide net of recruits, you probably have a wide net of schools that you're looking at. Open invite, open. So one of the Division I rules in terms of camps and whatnot is no Division I coach can run a camp that is invite only. So any prospect day that's being run by a college coach has to be open and all to any prospective student athlete. I'm sorry, sir. Like ours, we will email ours out. So we'll email them to the list that we get at a tournament like this. We'll send it to that database. We will also put ours on our website. We'll put it on Twitter. So we try to advertise ours as best as we can. But I would say probably every college out there, if you're interested in a specific school, they'll probably have it on their website. We do one in the fall. We do one in the winter in January because the weather's usually still pretty nice down here, and then we do 2 in the summer. I think we might streamline that to 1, but we do 2 in the summertime. So we have 4 over the course of the year. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about reclassification, what your point of view is for kids who are reclassifying?
Yeah, the reclass, dropping down a year, we're doing a postgraduate year. That's happened more and more. My personal opinion is that's a family decision. That's something that, as coaches, we don't really do that at Richmond. We don't say, hey, if you want to come to Richmond, you have to PG. Because not every family can do that, whether it's finances or, like saying that to a guy who's a 4.0 student with a 1300 on his SAT. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to do maybe a postgraduate year. So for us, I think it's a family decision. If it's something you think is best for your child, then I think it's a great option. But if a coach is pressuring you to do it specifically for that one school, then I don't know. I think that puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on the families. Any other questions? Well, yes.
You mentioned prospecting and how important they are because when they're involved. We're also talking about student athletes who play multiple sports.
Right.
It's real tough for student athletes to, in the wintertime, because they play ice hockey, football, and ball, to get away from their varsity level team.
Yep.
How does
Yeah, that's why we'll do multiple per year. So if someone says, hey, I have football in October, I can't come, we say, hey, we got one in January. You know, come to that one. And we're not gonna, one thing we don't do is we don't necessarily say, like, if you want to be recruited by Richmond, you have to be at our prospect day. You know, we don't want to put that pressure on the families either, so it's just another option that you have. It's not the be-all, end-all. So I would put more stock in go play football and, you know, then go to a prospect day. We'll also, like ours in the fall, we might do it on a Sunday, or we might do it like Saturday afternoon into Sunday morning, so that if there are people who have a Friday game and their football coach is comfortable with them playing lacrosse during the football season, that they can do that, you know. But trust me, that happens all the time, and we're the first people to say, you need to go to your football, you know, game. Part of being on that team is being committed to that team, and so that's why we do multiple throughout the year. Well, I appreciate you guys listening and bearing with me. Hopefully this was helpful. You know, and you know, I know I'm excited to be here throughout the event. This has always been a great event for us, and it's right in our backyard, which is even nicer. So thank you guys for your time and for your ear, and good luck this week.